Okay. Hi, everyone. We are live. Hi, hi, hi. It's great to see you, everyone. I usually say good morning. I'm going to say good afternoon. Welcome to Wonder Series Wednesday, your weekly opportunity to wonder how life would be if you looked at it from another perspective, if you opened yourself up to the possibilities and changed your mindset. Who would you be? What would you do? What would you create? And ultimately, how can that help you live that healthy, happy life that you are meant to live? So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Denise Stiegel. I'm the CEO and curator at livinghealthylist.com and your host of the Wonder Series. Those of you who've been following along, you know that October is both Perimenopause Awareness Month and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we've been alternating topics during the month on the Wonder Series so we can give each one the appropriate attention. And as most of us ladies are dealing with either perimenopausal symptoms, we all know somebody who has been affected by breast cancer. So these are two topics that are very relevant and very real in our lives. If you did miss last week's episode, please check it out on the Living Healthy List YouTube channel. And while you're there, please subscribe and click that little bell to get notified when we add new interviews, which we do, of course, every week. So I'm really excited to chat with my guest today. I have personally been following her for at least the past 6 years. I've participated in her programs. I've had the pleasure of interviewing her before, and I was very, very humbled to have been a guest on her very successful podcast. Please welcome hormone balancing fitness expert, founder of Flipping 50, the first and only exclusively made for women in menopause membership in the world. Debra Atkinson, welcome, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Denise. Always good to talk to you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. You're always fun and fabulous and full of just new information. What I really appreciate about what you bring to the table, obviously fitness is an important piece of what we do, but what I really think is important is that you bring that research piece to fitness for women. So talking about perimenopause and fitness, let's just dive right in. How does perimenopause symptoms, or whatever it might be, how does it affect us when it comes to our exercise?
Well, from all sides. So, first of all, I have to say that. So, I think almost anybody listening who's tuning in because this is an area or a topic that they're really interested in, it's because you're going through it, or you're going to, but it's probably more of interest if you're going there and you're in this moment and nothing's working. So, I think the first is our reaction to it. When we find ourselves in perimenopause and may not even have put a label on where we are yet. Maybe you haven't started skipping periods. You haven't had that hot flash, but you are noticing there's weight gain there and you're doing the same thing you've been doing, but something's not having the same result, right? So it's that message. First of all, our reaction is turn it up. I'm going to do more. I'm going to do it longer. I'm going to do it harder. And potentially, I'm going to do all of those. And I'm going to get this off right now. Don't like that. Going. And we can really get ourselves into a rut because that will be really, I think, one of the first signs for a lot of women, unfortunately. There are 35 signs of menopause, but not all of us get them all. Some of us get some odd anomaly ones where you would never necessarily put that together until it just becomes obvious. Like, I have to remember I was pregnant. I mean, there is only one outcome, right? And I mean, it's ninth month. I'm overdue, and I wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I have the flu, and I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, it took me an hour to figure out, oh my God, this is it. I'm in labor. So is it any wonder that women, don't know that we're in perimenopause because we don't get that, doorbell ringing saying, oh, here you go. Get ready. You're on this path. So that's first, we respond or react with the thing that we always used to do, and potentially it probably worked for us. But I will say that we probably got away with it, right? But when we start going on that roller coaster ride of hormones, which is actually what's happening. So if we could flip the hood up and say, what's happening under there? The hormones that used to like have a cycle every month and be pretty predictable. And whether yours was the same as mine or not, you and I each got used to our own whatever norm that was for a monthly cycle for decades. And now suddenly that's changing. And the roller coaster is trending downward, but it can still go up and down. And that's part of the problem, because we've got to learn to ride the wave. And we think, okay, I'm going to have a smooth ride. And then we're like, oh no, here's a speed bump, and this has thrown me for a loop. And that is a part of it. It's like being on a basketball team and playing defense. You got to read the defense. When they change their strategy, we've got to change the way we strategize. And that will be the way exercise changes in menopause if you're going to be most successful at it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the really good news is if you will embrace the changes that you want to, should, and will impact your today, you can be fit, you can feel good, you can have energy. As I want to say, one of the things I really hate about social media is that so often influencers or sites are just simply posting, if you have these signs, you're in menopause, or here are the signs that you're in perimenopause or symptoms of perimenopause. And it's like, if we keep reading those, sooner or later, we're going to get them. I mean, somebody needs to say potentially, might be, but doesn't have to be. And I probably need to counterpost and say, here are the symptoms that are helped by doing the proper exercise. And there are a lot. There's kind of a dirty dozen, really, that we can help considerably if you exercise correctly.
It's interesting, exercise correctly, because I was one of those people who, okay, I need to do it longer, harder, faster. And you're right, in the beginning, it worked. And then I was tired, and with tired became cranky, and with cranky became eating a little bit too much, a little sugar here, more sugar here and there. So it really started to work in the opposite direction for me.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And that cycle you just described, honestly, that can happen to a 20-year-old, right? But it is what is your data, your feedback, that what you're doing is you're not in that sweet spot. Mm-hmm. And your sweet spot, my sweet spot, they move anytime in our lives. But if we are in that exercise sweet spot, then what we're doing is helping ourselves optimize our fitness level, have a good appetite, healthy one. Some of the women watching probably don't have much appetite. That's a problem too. It's like, are you kidding? We do a lot. We make a lot of decisions. We're busy people. We should have a healthy appetite. We could expect that. But you also shouldn't have these wild, rampant cravings where you can eat everything in the house and you need it right now. That's a sign you're exercising too much. And if you're exercising too little, I mean, you could be in that, I don't have any appetite, I'm not really hungry. So calling that fasting, really, fasting has its place, but it's not asked for, I don't have an appetite, right? So
I've never had that problem.
Well, yeah, a lot of people are like that, but others are like, dealing with gut issues or avoiding them. And I find a lot of women in our perimenopause, menopause, and just post are just avoiding eating and fasting, calling it fasting because they don't want to eat, because then they feel bloated and don't feel good. And instead of getting to the root cause of the problem, we're just avoiding it. So that's not a great place to be if you want to actually be at your most fit. I mean, you can't imagine a healthy, fit athlete who doesn't eat, can you? So, I mean, we can, even be mini versions of that and our best inner athlete and not fuel that body we've got.
Very, very true. So we're finding, me, that belly fat this was not something that I ever experienced, even back in the day when I had gone through hormone therapy, when I was going through in vitro. And that, talk about another thing, throwing your hormones through a loop.
Right.
But I still never really had that issue. Sure, I had gained a little bit of weight at that point. But now I'm starting to notice, okay, what is this tire thing, and how on earth do I get rid of it? Because I'm one of those people that still wants to, work out harder and more. I know better because my friend Debra tells me not to do that. But it's still a bit of it's kind of falling back to like old habits. I want to jump on my elliptical for another half an hour or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so true. And I think we've got to give ourselves a little grace. That is going to happen. We've got to just plan that. Something that we've been conditioned to think and feel for 30 or 40 years. If you're 50 or 60, it's not going to go away just because we give you a logical scientific answer today. It's not. It's kind of like hearing, really, no fat, low fat is not the best yogurt to buy. But if you go stand in front of that yogurt case, what are you going to pick? I think you're going to be tempted to grab the low fat, right? Because surely that must be better. Yeah. So I think we've got to give ourselves a little grace that that's not it. But we are more susceptible to cortisol. So first of all, that's what that's all about. As we start going through that roller coaster and estrogen is really trending downward, cortisol goes up. It's like, this goes down, this will go up, and your body says, I'm going to keep you in balance. So it's like substituting one hormone for the other. It does a really bad job of assuming the role of estrogen. And what we're left with is what negative effects cortisol does have. Cortisol breaks down muscle. Cortisol makes bone breakdown happen much faster as well. And it stores fat. It signals your body to store fat. And your body cannot do two opposing things. So it won't burn fat during exercise for you if cortisol is high, telling you to store fat. So what we do is contribute more to that storage message when we override it and say, no, I'm not going to listen to the data my body's giving me. I'm just going to override it and get this weight off. That will backfire. And so women often will come and say, I'm doing all the things and I'm actually not losing weight. I'm gaining weight. And it's a matter of, yes, you can exercise hard. Most women, so there are a few, if you've got adrenal issues, we need to actually soften that up for a bit, but we need to exercise hard, but just we need to do far less of it. And you will find your best fitness level if you do that. So I think two things I want everybody to hear. A lot of fitness professionals, a lot of health influencers, doctors are saying this, but I think they're not saying the second part to those of us that are like, but no, you don't get it. I want to still be really fit. I want to feel like that athletic person that I was. That's part of my identity. And I get that. But you can still have that. So it's that you may need to restore first, rest to recover, do a little less hardcore stuff, more yoga, more walking, and reduce that cortisol, because that's your roadblock. So I'm lived in Colorado for a while, and I'm an Iowa girl. So if anybody's familiar with I-80, that is the road you take for like 12 hours. And there's a lot of windmills between the two, but it's like road construction on I-80 in the summertime. You could be driving a Ferrari, right? That desire to want to do exercise more and harder, pushing the gas pedal. And yet, if there's no shoulder because of road construction and there's no second lane, there's one lane, you got to get through that first before you can go fast. So we've got to remove the obstacle, and you really have to look around and say, am I dealing with a lot of emotional stressors? Am I trying to diet and exercise hard? That's stress. doing the opposite things. I'm going through hormone challenges. That's a given. That's stress on my body, going through a major transformational change in my life. So there's a lot of things you've got to look at, and that has a domino effect on maybe sleep. So not getting sleep, that's a stressor. So you've got to say, in a bar graph, say if we said our sweet spot is, right here. If you're here, you're probably feeling good, your energy is good, your skin tone is good, you're in a better mode, and your appetite is good, but your cravings are non-existent. That's here. So all things that give you stress lead to this. So if your work stress happens to be high, you need a very little exercise here. You need to back that off. I'm in a moment where, my mother just passed away. There's a lot of family stressors and running a business on top of that. I'm not exercising very much right now because that's a source of self-care, right? So I'll get back to it, but right now I don't have the bandwidth.
Right.
And you gotta look all over in your life for those things. And instead of powering through, because it's what women do, right? We're like, I got that, we do for other people. It's kind of realizing you don't have so much bandwidth to do that during menopause. The road narrowed a little bit, so you can't change lanes as quickly.
Yeah, I love the idea of the concept of the traffic in the Ferrari, and I've been on I-80. I-80 goes right across country.
Yeah.
Same thing happens in Pennsylvania. Same road. But I think what's really interesting is, we use an allergies because I think we get them. Talk a little bit about like the science behind it, because that's the piece that you bring in that other people just avoid. A lot of fitness experts will say, you should work out 6 days a week and, 2 days heavy weights and, 3 days cardio. That's only 5 days. I missed a day.
Just throw in another one. Right. Yeah. Well, I think the important thing to realize is I got lucky, right? So I stumbled into the after 50 fitness formula for women by accident. And I quit my job at 49, started over, and that became my huge stressor. So I was kind of running on zero coming in from 50 to 57. There's been a lot of change and growth in my life. I'm grateful for that. But what I had to do over the course of about 12 to 14 months was kind of learn a new business or learn how to take it online when there were fewer resources than, say, post-pandemic, when we've got lots more. And so I went from someone who exercised hours a day to just 20 minutes. I would let myself away from the computer, but I was really, really stressed about this has to work. I mean, I had removed my nets. I said goodbye, quit the job. This will work out just fine, and then I was like, oh my God.
What I do.
Yeah. And that's when I started digging in because, something that happens positively for me after 12, 14 months, I actually looked better. I was leaner and stronger than I'd ever been exercising for hours a day. And you don't realize it. And I think according to the norm, right, I looked fit then, but I was really, at a place where it was happening just easily, right? Like nothing. But I dug in because just happening to me makes not a program. It just makes, okay, great. Good for you. Woohoo. Thank you.
Your own testimonial.
But what I realized is the research that exists for women in any phase of their life is really relatively small. Women go through about 7 major hormone changes in their lives. Not every woman, every change, either by choice or isn't blessed to be able to do it, but some go through multiples, right? So those people who have 6 and 7 children, God bless them, and they've gone through, prenatal and postnatal several times. But every one of those exercise prescriptions or phases of hormone change that a woman goes through demands a unique exercise prescription. So you take a 17-year-old who's just post-puberty and she wants to be a volleyball player, right? I mean, how are we going to make her work out so that she's also supporting her bone density for later and for strength in her adulthood? when we look at a woman who's prenatal, right? And how should she be exercising to nurture life? And postnatal, something different entirely. Versus perimenopause, as things go up and down and we're not sleeping and we've got hot flashes while we work out. Postmenopause, where osteoporosis becomes a bigger risk, and where you've got that, and you've got joints that have lived with you for 60 years. Every one of those is very different, hormonally and joint wise. And so now if we break down the research and we compare men to women, there's only about 39% overall that features female subjects. But if we say 7 of those hormonal phases, if we do the division, let's say it was spread out evenly. We know it's probably not perfect, but that's less than 6% of research on any one phase of life that you're in at the moment. So unless we knew to ask, was that program I'm doing, even to your personal trainer, was this workout based on women just like me? Not just on my joint needs, but like a woman who's suffering from weight gain and belly fat, and the chances are probably not. I mean, we're waking up to the idea that we're not mice, we're not men, and we're not young women, and those are the people who are in studies more often than not. The people who are animals, right, in the studies. So we really have to dig into that and understand it. So the research for women really comes down to this. So when you were talking 6 days a week and do this, this, and this, first of all, it's your hormone status and mine right now. We may be the exact same age. We may be maybe we hit menopause at the same age. And I know that's not true of us, but that doesn't mean that we're having the same signs and symptoms right now telling us that we need the same exact exercise. So it still is, talk to me about you. So there's a blueprint, and ultimately we'd like you to get to, doing 2 strength training sessions a week where you're reaching muscular fatigue for all your major muscle groups. And I know everybody out there wants toned arms, but don't go right for the bicep curls. You want to go right for the bigger major muscles, because ultimately that's going to allow you to show those pretty smaller muscles. And then you can fill in with 1, 2, or 3 high intensity interval training sessions. And by high intensity, we have to clarify this. You need to get breathless. So just alternating a jog and a walk and doing 2 different speeds is not truly high intensity interval training. So if you want that exercise that really targets visceral belly fat, it is that combination of strength training and of high intensity interval training has been proven for postmenopausal women to be the most effective. But the other thing is true. We've got to go back to, if you're dealing with a ton of stress right now, those may not be what you need today. You may need to focus on going for long walks and decreasing that cortisol first, because that's the roadblock. And then gradually begin to progress to the point where you're doing that, and filling in, last but not least, with low to moderate exercise, because it's that movement all day. And if it's 10 minutes, it counts. If it's 20, it counts. If you're walking a dog for 30, great. But all that moving, get up and out of that chair, that really matters. And postmenopausal, more than anything. So you should be still doing the strength and the high intensity intervals, but the more you move later, the better it will be. For a woman in post or perimenopause who's still struggling with the roller coaster, doing just more of all of it and doing the more movement she may not be ready for it. It may just make her more tired. So kind of, again, it's your blueprint. So you've got to go through, how am I feeling right now? What feedback am I getting from what I'm doing? Because your health habits are speaking to you. It's the result you have right now is because of what you've been doing regularly. So you have to say, is it working? And then don't go nuts on me tomorrow and change 47 things. Change one thing.
Right.
Change one thing. Yeah.
Right. One thing that I noticed you did not mention, and I bring this up because I'm so guilty of this. Belly fat to me means I need to do more crunches or work on my core.
Yeah.
What does that even mean anymore?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Now.
I just did a live shortly before we came on, and I was talking. Somebody had a question about planks, and I said, who's guilty of this? That there is an area you want to work, and I think a woman had asked about her thighs, and I said, here's what you're going to be tempted to do. You're going to be tempted to do squats and lunges and do every thigh exercise you can think of. And I said, actually, who isn't guilty of doing that when it's core? Like, you want a flatter belly, you want a slender belly. Actually, the more you focus on an area, the more potential you give it to build, not to reduce, right? So yeah, there's the way to think about that. So you want to do slimming kinds of exercises, but some of the best things you can do are what we call bracing, right? So you're bracing your core. You're not actually causing it to do motion. So Denise, I'm going to have to ask you to wash your mouth out with soap for mentioning sit-ups and crunches, but I say that because we're friends and
I know better. I really do.
I know you know better.
I do.
But nobody, and it's not a woman in menopause or because you're in menopause, it's your 20-year-old, your 18-year-old doesn't need to be doing crunches. We only have so many forward flexions in our spine. And you may be less vulnerable because you're small framed and your bones are thinner. Those with a thick frame seem to be at greatest risk for ruptured discs and problems when they're doing forward flexion. But that doesn't exclude any of us completely. Mm-hmm. So think about that. But there are so many other things we should and could be doing. And we are excellent. I'm going to say, everybody freeze right now. Are you sitting right now? Many of us are. We're excellent already at forward flexion. We do not need to get better at forward flexion, right? Which is what a crunch and a sit-up is. We need extension. We need stabilization. So either practice movement or practice resisting movement, by applying force and holding a weight here, standing up and moving it away from your body, making your core turn on. Those kinds of things are much better and more valuable for bringing you in. So absolutely, core is going to be a thing, but you're not going to lose fat by doing core exercise. Core will tone the muscles underneath. We may need that. If you have a weak abdominals, you won't be able to go as fast during your intervals. You won't be able to lift as much weight during your strength training. And those are the things that will actually help you reduce your overall fat and lose the belly fat.
So a lot of the things that we're talking about really are almost anti-intuitive, based on what we've been taught through the years. And again, I really like to bring up the fact that, Debra, you do the research, you've written the books, so you're that trainer who goes over and beyond. Actually, I'm looking to see. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see. There's one over here. I've got two of your books. What's my favorite one is You've Still Got It, Girl.
Yep.
So ladies, if you're looking for a book that is going to help you, but going to help you at your speed, that is, to me, that's the book to go for. I love that one. You still got it, girl. Yeah. And there are lots of, you have some really great handouts in that book as well.
Yes. And I think it's helpful because although you're wanting to get fit, right? You want the athletic body. It explains why the exercise alone isn't going to do it. Where it may have been the only change you needed to make at one point. Now it's a much more integrated approach, which also means you take the heat off the exercise. It doesn't have to be the hot and heavy. And when you're so busy you can't, or tired you can't, it's okay, because you're working on your nutrition, dealing with your stress, sleeping better, and all of those things line the hormones up that you need to hang on to the fitness you've got.
So I have a question, and this really does pertain to me because I used to run half marathons, and I know you've run half marathons, you've done triathlons. I can't seem to run that much anymore. I don't know that I really need to, but how do I still, for that athlete who's like that woman who's always been an athlete, how do you keep some of that in your workout without it going, to be too much, too far?
Yeah. So I think the phenomenon you're talking about is like a drug addict, like it's escalation, right? The same hit, doesn't do it for you. So you have to do a little bit more. But I think, signing up for races or for events, whether they're familiar kinds of things, like it's a 5K or a 10K instead of a half, it can be beneficial. And maybe it's something different, and totally unique. Like you've never done a bike road race, or you've, never done a, what are they called? Ragnar, where you canoe and you do all the crazy things together. So, and you don't have to do a tough mudder, kind of thing, but something safe, or you sign up for, something like a flipping 50 retreat where training for it, like to do hiking for several days at altitude, that's going to be a challenge. And I think part of it is like looking forward to Christmas or the vacation, right? It's the looking forward to and the planning that keeps you juiced up and like excited about what you're doing. So I love the idea of a challenge, and I also think that, if you really love a half, and you mentally may not be able to do this, but if you could allow yourself to walk it, it would be less, of a negative, because it would require less training. You'd still need to do a little, but you can have a long day of walking, and that's not going to spill your hormones over, like running it might, and doing months and months of training longer durations will. So the line for cortisol increasing and not correspondingly coming back down after a workout is about between 60 and 75 minutes. So ladies, if you're going out there regularly doing those hour-long runs and finding that's not working, don't think about doing that longer. Do it shorter and do it higher intensity instead. Find hills and do repeats. Could be much more valuable. So I still would challenge everybody to, find something that is potentially new, so it still is a different kind of a mindset as you do it, and a challenge, but maybe for different reasons, not the endurance reason. And I want to say this to those of us that, like you, I like those endurance events. It's like my crack, right? I'm so tempted I want to sign up for one. And yet I know that 2 years ago, that threw me under the bus, and I gained like 14 cortisol pounds. I don't need that cortisol pack. Thank you very much, right? But my mind thinks it wants to do an endurance event. So you've got to, think about, there may be a time when you can again, but if you're still riding that hormone change, now's potentially not the time. Or you decide, I'm okay with that. And I know I may gain weight while I do it. You may decide that, but I think consciously it's probably your choice.
But it's important to knowing that going into it. I do love the idea of a challenge, giving yourself something to look forward to. Speaking of challenges, you have a challenge coming up, do you not?
I have a 5-day flip coming up. We are going to do some special things over the holidays as well, just kind of open to everybody, more of a stress reliever than kick your butt, right? So if you're looking for I got to kick my butt and get a workout here during the holidays, that's not it. I'm going to actually try to help everybody chill down a little bit later. But we do a 5-day flip. And what it is a great demonstration of everything we've talked about, Denise, right? It's just that, how do I fit in a very short workout? How do I experience the hit? And I don't mean high intensity interval training in this case. I just mean the fix that I need for movement to give me some energy, but not to drain me. How do I get that little bit in? So if you're needing a start or you need a restart, just to convince yourself, yes, you can do this 5 days in a row. You can do this. This is it. They're 15 minutes or shorter. I promise you, you've got time for this one.
Perfect. How do we find that?
That's at flipping50.com/5, the number day flip.
Well, that's easy. And I will make sure we have that in the show notes. And that will be awesome. Anybody and everybody who is listening, who is watching us live, who watches this replay, check it out, join it. Everybody can do this for 5 days. Like I said, I've done a number of Debra's programs, and truly they're I don't want to say simple, but they're easy to follow. In the beginning, they seem like they're going to be easy, but then when you're halfway through, you really feel it. I really feel it. So they really are amazing exercises that we can all do, that you don't need to go to a gym. You can do just right here in your own home, which is really what I appreciate, because my gym is here.
Yeah, right.
Living in Minnesota in the wintertime, I don't go outside very much.
True.
You're from Iowa originally.
Yes.
It's cold down there though. But Debra, thank you so much for this amazing information. It's always awesome to talk to you. Any last pieces of information or tidbits that you want to share before we get off?
I think we covered everything, but I think the biggest thing we should leave everybody with is that, hormones and going through menopause is definitely a ride. But if you pay attention to the data and the feedback that you're getting, we don't have to just blame hormones. So we can interpret that data and respond accordingly, and you can feel better.
Mm-hmm. So listen to your body.
Right.
Wonderful. Debra, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Always appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today live or watching us on the replay. I'm Denise Stegall, CEO and curator at livinghealthylist.com, and your host for the Wonder Series, your weekly chance to wonder what life would be like if you looked at it from a different perspective. We will see you next week, Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Till then, I leave you with this: healthy living, happy life.